What I'm here today to talk about is everyone has a story. Our stories are drips in our buckets of life, and they are important. As important as they are, they're more valuable if we share them. So I'm here today to share with some of my drips.
I met this gentleman at a conference. Now, this was one of the live conferences where we were still going face to face, hand to hand, talking to each other. And I convinced him to come on a podcast. You know what? 3 years later, he still joins me every month. So if you ever go to Beyond Clean with Ace and you hear our podcast, on the first Monday of every month, this gentleman comes on. Now, who am I talking about? He works for, well, Mannington Mills, people that make flooring. And yeah, most of the time, whenever we're on the podcast, we talk about flooring, but we talk about a lot more than that. He has 25 years of knowledge in the flooring business. He is from Fort White, Florida. He is live on the stage. I'm going to exit one way. He's going to come on, and we're going to listen to Sean talk about channeling your future.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It was a long time ago that you and I met, and it was a lot of fun, and it's been fun getting to know you better over the years. What I'm here today to talk about is everyone has a story. Our stories are drips in our buckets of life, and they are important. As important as they are, they're more valuable if we share them. So I'm here today to share with some of my drips. Every person in the world does their part to make society work. You could be the person in the hospital or the nurse or the floor tech cleaning the hospital floor. We all have purpose and knowledge. All anyone takes with them to the afterlife is their knowledge. If you do not share that with anyone, it's a true loss. I'm often overwhelmed with tasks and responsibilities. Most of us are. People who get things done have figured out a way to maintain their lives and keep all the plates spinning successfully. Maintaining a healthy lifestyle and keeping yourself on task at work are all things we do, but can we do it better? This hit me all one day when I was working for a grocery store chain unloading delivery trucks. The manager came in the back room and asked the truck crew if we could stay and clean an extra 2 hours at the store after we unloaded the truck. The dreaded regional manager was coming tomorrow. Before I thought about it, I burst out, "Why don't you maintain the store at that required level all the time?" To which he replied, "That maybe I should find employment elsewhere." That got me thinking about how I was running my own life. All I'd ever done was work hard. I started a lawn business when I was 12. My dad was always worked hard as well. And the only difference was that he wanted me to work hard and smart. He was gruff and full of fire, and he just wanted me to have more in life than what he had had. The lawn business was all so I could work all summer into fall. All my buddies worked in the watermelon fields picking watermelons. They worked about 4 weeks and then they were done. I started working before school got out and worked until school started back. Made more money then than in other parts of my life. So started the many drips in my bucket. So one thing I knew how to do hard work was to work hard. Never figured those days would teach me how to sell. My mom was always big on presentation. Haircut, nails clean, shirt tucked in. You never see her with a hair out of place. And when you do see pictures of me as a kid, I'm the same. So here I am, clean cut, hard worker, graduated high school, standing on the football field. My mom asked me, "Sean, you've completed high school. What are your goals?" I looked her directly in the eye and said, "Mom, I'm going to make $100,000 a year by the time I'm 30. And she laughed at me and said, "That's a really good goal, but you should go back and look at reality." See, Mom and Dad had never made more than 50 grand combined the whole time we were growing up. She could not fathom making that kind of money, and I figured, what the hell, I was just going to work hard till I got there. At this time, I had no idea I was a salesman. My first sales gig was high school football, and I was 150 pounds soaking wet with pads on. Again, I believed hard work got you success. So I busted my tail in practice, and I ran sprints hard, and I pushed myself. And here I was, a senior in high school, playing on special teams. And I told Coach Vickers that I wanted to play in the game. He said to wait and that I would get my chance. Well, I saw that window closing fast, so I started walking up and down the field with him and telling him how I wouldn't have missed that tackle, or I wouldn't have recovered that, or I would have recovered that fumble. He finally got aggravated and said, DeVore, go in there and do what you say you'll do. First play, 150-pound nose guard causes a fumble and gives us field position. Determination, hard work, right? I had sold him on the fact that I would perform on the field. I heard my parents say, if someone asks you to do something and you agree, do it to the best of your ability. So I finished up my senior year, second in tackles and the most quarterback sacks. Yes, it was 2A high school, but damn, it was fun. More drips in my bucket. So I graduated from community college, had my heart broken by the most wonderful girl I knew, and worked construction for a guy who was so interesting to me. I needed to work year-round to pay for college, so my dad, in his infinite wisdom, said, go down to the hardware store and see what contractors are hiring. So I marched right down to the local hardware store and I asked Mr. Jerry, hey, who was hiring? And this guy, Bruce, was standing there and said, I'm hiring. And there it was, a job. Bruce owned the business and employed his wife's brother, and the two of them built several houses a year, and I learned there was a whole world out there past Chiefland, Florida. Bruce, who had hitchhiked from Boston to Florida twice, lived in a house that when everyone came over for a party, the floor would sag. Taught me all kinds of stories. He also taught me that a house, you can move an entire house with a lever. Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum to which to place it, and I shall move the world, Archimedes said. I listened and watched as I imagined the life that he had led prior to coming to Florida. More drips in my bucket. I took this focus and hard work with me to Florida State University to pursue a career in law enforcement. I started classes in criminal justice and began working at the grocery store. And as you learned earlier, I needed a job. They didn't fire me, but I quit and started looking, found a job as a maintenance man in an apartment complex while still attending classes. This is where things get interesting. The place was on a hill in Tallahassee, no elevators, just a good old dolly and me moving the washing machines up and down the hill. I was always trying to find an angle to make more money. But like my dad, all I was doing was working more hours. I was installing some extra door and window locks for a couple that had moved from Chicago to Tallahassee to start a business. And they had a ground floor apartment, and they were concerned about burglars. I chatted with the wife while the husband and son went over plans for the business. Right as I was about to leave, she said, you know, you'd make a great salesman. I said, I've never sold anything. I work construction. They invited me back for an interview, new haircut, fresh shirt, polished shoes, and I got the job. I was making $150 a week, and they offered me $400. And then I went on commission. And that's where I learned about commission. I had no idea what commission was, but I was going to take these guys' money for a month anyway. Yep, you got it, more drips. A month turned into 2 months, setting up the new Carpet Land USA in Tallahassee, and I went on commission the third month and sold $27,000 of carpet and made $506 in a week. This commission thing, I like it. As you may have guessed, law enforcement took a back seat. And Art was the manager at Carpet Land, the husband from earlier. He was a gruff Chicagoland native, mean as nails, and went through administrative assistants like paper towels. He moved me off the retail floor and into contract sales. And this is where I learned about the end user. He said, DeVore, you need to start wearing a suit to work with a tie now. In which I replied, Art, I don't own a suit. He sent me to the local toggery and bought me 5 suits, 5 ties, and 6 shirts. And these were deducted from my $506 a week. Here I am, 20 years old, fresh suit and a tie, haircut, polished shoes, and a handful of business cards. Art instructs me to go to the local mall and to go to every store and ask them if they like to buy carpet. I took off and made for the mall, just like I went to the hardware store. After the 4th store, I went to the payphone. Yep, payphone. And I called Art and said, hey, Art, this is not going to work. They're all national chains and they don't buy locally. You ready for me to come back to the store? His response was, hell no, that's not why you're there. Keep going and hit every store. It took that 2 days, 5 pounds of sweat from embarrassment, but I learned that I would not die if they said no. Not one of them was interested. But I knew how to ask for the sale now, and I was on my way. Carpetland was based in Munster, Indiana, and had stores all over the Chicagoland area. I was 21 years old, and I was making $52,000 a year, and I took the opportunity to move, a new adventure. I was trying to find an apartment where the floor sagged. Changed the oil in my car, got new tires, rented a U-Haul trailer, and left Florida. Never been past North Carolina my whole life. Moved to downtown Chicago, Illinois. Talk about the Beverly Hillbillies. I'd never worked so hard in my life. I learned that $52,000 a year in Chicago was like $5,000 a year in Florida, and ended up with 2 jobs, selling carpet during the day and selling suits 2 nights a week and weekends. I just stayed with the basics. I made my bed in the morning, got a clean haircut, polished shoes, and nice clothes. I was learning sales, how to read a person when they walked in the door of the men's department, learning every sale has a purpose. A guy needs one tie for a retirement party, another needs an entire wardrobe for the year. Both were important to me. If I sold $250 on average per hour, all my clothes were 50% off, including sales. So if I bought a suit that was 30% off on Father's Day, and I was a top performer, I got the suit for another 50% less. Figured out how to keep clothes on my back, more drips. I had also left Carpetland for a job with a distributor on the wholesale side of the business, selling to dealers like Carpetland. The salesman for the distributor liked me and got me an interview. I had learned that perception was reality in Chicago, so I wore a beeper so my customers could page me if they needed me. Here we go again, new haircut, pressed shirt, and a new suit, polished shoes, and one of my buddies paging me every 10 minutes. That made me look, I was very busy. The guy interviewing me was from England and was very impressed by 2 things. I'd answered all of his questions in sequence, and my pager kept going off. I was working smarter, making more money. Time went by, my patience in Chicago had worn thin. Waiting line for everything, and the weather was just not for me. So one of my friends in the flooring business got me an interview with a flooring manufacturing company. They needed a rep in South Florida. I'd been in manufacturing sales for about 2 years and loved it, calling on my end users, the people that cut the check. That was my favorite sales call. Ended up getting the job and moving to Davie, Florida. I remember calling my parents and told them that I had a new job and I was going to have to move. Mom asked, "Where now?" I said, "Boca," to make it sound interesting. She said, "That's in Florida." I said, "I know." Needless to say, they were happy. Now the work started. I did not know a soul in that South Florida. I was given a storage unit full of books, a list of accounts, and told to go sell. Here we go again. Make my bed in the morning, get a new haircut, polished shoes, and a new suit. Yes, back then you had to wear a suit to be in sales. I went to every account on that list, eliminating the ones out of business and the ones that did not seem nice. I started building and moving that house with the lever. Over 19 months, I built that business from $500,000 to $1.9 million. And then I got the call, the one I'd been waiting for, and I didn't know it. I was 31 years old, found the girl I lost in high school, married her, bought a house, gained an 11-year-old daughter. Things were a little stressful. These were happy drips in my bucket, and it was fuller than ever. So I'd gotten a call from an RVP, a regional vice president of sales for Bentley, a California-based manufacturer of carpet. He was also a lieutenant colonel in the Army. I knew what to do. I went and got a haircut, polished my shoes, got my suit cleaned, and my shirt was pressed with way too much starch. I was all about that night on the football field. Could I have the power to ask for $100 grand? I met the colonel. He told me that I was the one that had the reputation on the street. Yes, me, the 150-pound nose guard, the lawn guy, the construction worker, the guy who was the world would be great in sales. He asked me, "What will it take to get you to come for Bentley?" At that time, I was making nowhere near the money I was about to ask for. I looked him dead in the eye and said, $100,000 before expenses. I learned my lesson with the previous company about that little trick. Well, the colonel said, putting his feet on the desk and stretching his hands behind his head. I can do that. What other questions do you have? Holy crap. He agreed to pay me $100 grand. First thing I did was call my mom and tell her. I was a year late, but I had done it. $100,000 by the time I was 31. She responded, "You always surprise me, but would you make him put it in writing?" Back to reality. I tell you this story not to brag about $100 grand, because a new wife, a daughter, a house in South Florida is more like making 20 grand. It's about what my goal was at the time. I learned with a daughter and a wife that money in the bank is not the answer. They are but my drips in the bucket of life. I often tell my customers who tell me, "Sean, I'm never going to give you a lot of orders. I am small time." I respond to them with this visual. My dad always had a 5-gallon bucket buried under a spigot, and that spigot always dripped. I asked Dad one day why he did that, and he said, "Everything needs water, son. Squirrels, the dogs, an occasional possum. The water's always fresh if it drips and the bucket is full." I look at my business like drips in the bucket. I don't care if I'm selling a pair of socks or an entire hospital of flooring. Every customer, large or small, is important to your business and your life. If you want to reach your goals, focus on yourself as a person. Wherever I go, I make sure I do a couple things. I make my bed in the morning, my shoes are clean and polished, my shirt's pressed, and I have a nice haircut. Those are my basics. So basics in personal life and basics in sales. If you want to be a success in your own mind, not what others may perceive as success, find out what your basics are. I love being a salesman. The job provides for my family, my hobbies, and keeps me grounded in reality. Every customer is a drip in your bucket, leading to the goal at the end of the year. May your bucket of life always be full, and please always share your drips.